Welcome to the Pull the Chute podcast with Jeff and Jana. This is our weekly venture into the world of small to medium-sized businesses and the entrepreneurial spirit that drives success.
So our goal here is to help you grow and to be the best you can be, both in business and personally. To do that, we identify and we discuss topics that will hopefully help you as you work to build a successful business.
We also interview business owners and executives. It's our hope that you may be able to gain insight on ways to help you be a better leader and provide a better culture for your people.
Our mission here is to help you pull the chute once a week to work on your business instead of always working in your business.
So we hope you find these discussions insightful, helpful, and useful.
And thanks for your support. We hope you enjoy today's podcast.
Well, welcome everyone to the Pull the Chute podcast with Jeff and Jana. As always, we are thrilled that you are here supporting us. Hey, Jana, how are things in Nashville today?
They are good.
Are
They're
they good?
a little dreary.
Right.
We're a little dreary, but hey, we're hanging in there and no sudden movements. You know what I mean? We don't have any hurricanes or earthquakes or, any natural disasters. So we're good. It's a good day.
Awesome. I love it. And here in Chicago too, it's the sun's actually out, which is a fun thing when we see the sun here. So that's always good. So, hey, we have a great guest for today, Jana. Chris Leonard is here with us. Chris and I have actually met before and had some great conversations. So I'm excited to have him on the show today. Chris, welcome to the show.
Hey, Jeff, Jana. So glad to be here, guys. Thanks for having me.
You bet.
So, Chris, we always like to have our guests kind of give their background because we can't do it justice. So do us a favor, give us a brief background about who you are and tell our listeners how you got to where you're at today, and then we'll kind of launch into some conversation.
Awesome. I have a story you're not going to hear again. I started out in the music industry as an audio engineer on the road, first on the contractor side and then working for artists. So I have had a lot of sleepless nights in big box trucks, and I've had a lot of sleepless nights trying to sleep on stages. And then I've transitioned into very comfortable nights in tour buses. And then when it was time to have a family, I had a couple encounters with people who are way further down and further up that career path than me, whose lives I didn't want, who didn't have great family lives, and who felt like that their career had landed them in some place where they had a personal life they didn't want and had wished they'd made different decisions. Not everybody, but enough people that I felt like the odds were really stacked against it for me. And I decided I have this other great skill set I want to invest in, so I did. So in a way, I went into the family business after that, because for a little while when I was growing up, my dad was actually a business coach.
Oh, wow.
Though I didn't find that originally. I first went into project management because I knew how to get stuff done on a deadline. I got a show done by 6 p.m. every day, right? And then I found Scrum and Agile coaching through that. And then through Agile coaching, I kind of made my way back around to business coaching, because my passion is building high-performing teams and the leaders who run them. I want to make sure every team feels like they belong, that they trust each other, that they love working together, and that they are a well-oiled machine. And I have a superpower for walking into teams that are underperforming, both burning out and falling behind at the same time, and finding transformative possibilities hiding in plain sight on those teams. I've never found a team I couldn't make a lot faster and a lot happier really quickly through things that everybody else had overlooked, but that, again, were hiding in plain sight. So I love doing that. That's my passion, and I've been doing that for a little while. I also really love coaching the leader too. The leader is a mind I intuitively understand. I know how lonely it can be at the top, and I love to get with that person and help them solve their own problems, or just listen to them solve their own problems, because half the time that's what they need most. Anyway, so that's enough about me.
No, that's really interesting, Chris, because you're kind of along the lines talking about this that Jeff and I really believe in, and that is one of the first things you said about teams is listening to each other, respecting each other, kind of understanding what each other brings to the table and their strengths and their challenges. Because that's how you build a good team, is you find people's strengths and also their not so strengths and then move them into the right places. So tell us a little bit about how you do that. Like, when you come in and you say, I can ramp up a team very quickly, what are you looking for to help assist in that process?
First, I want to know the definition of high performance in that context. Is it getting product to market fast? Is it making crucial strategic decisions? Is it doing really innovative or creative work that breaks some new ground? What you prioritize in terms of the value that the team is bringing has a big impact on how the team needs to work. And the first big mistake a lot of leaders make is giving a team two number one priorities that are in conflict with each other. Like, again, innovation and time to market are inherently in tension with each other. And you probably can't be number one at both those things. So that's the first thing. Second, I look at the data and see unsparingly, how well are they doing at the thing they're supposed to be prioritizing? If the objective is to get product to market fast, are they on time with their roadmap? Are they trending toward hitting all their milestones over the next year, or do we have some trouble here? I can usually tell from a team's data if they're using, your Atlassian suite, your Monday.com, whatever have you, whether they're in good shape on that stuff or not. And then I got to confront reality. Are we where we need to be? And if we're not, what are we going to do about it? Oftentimes, the buyer or the leader may have a hunch, but it's maybe the last one to know. So after I've confronted reality, I got to present a plan for fixing it. And sometimes that's a coaching plan, and oftentimes it's confronting the environment around the team. What's the container and what's broken about it? Again, if you have conflicting objectives, 31 OKRs, that kind of situation, straightening out that container can be a big part of getting the team straightened out. And then finally, I just go start picking up the low-hanging fruit, which is sometimes hanging so low it's practically rotting on the vine, and start working on those things that the team has overlooked or that the people around them have overlooked that can be major impediments to their success, and that taking care of those things become major accelerators of their success because they start to believe they can be a lot better than they ever knew. They don't realize how hard they've worked and how far behind they've gotten while working that hard. And when they get out of their own way, they find that they're successful and not working nearly as hard. They have better personal lives and their day at work is more joyful and easy. So once I start getting momentum on that, it's a pretty good glide path to building a high-performing team. I could go on, but there's a lot to it.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot to it. And so how do you fit the people into these pieces? You talk a lot about product to market quicker and, making sure that all your systems are in place. That's the structural part and the intangible. Let's talk a little bit about the people piece, just because I find that interesting. And that's what we spoke about a little bit before we pushed the record button with Jeff and I, and that is your people. How do you kind of put them in the right place, or how do you coach them?
Yeah. Understanding people's relative strengths and backgrounds is important. I've done a lot of work in coaching software and big tech teams, and oftentimes the factors you've got to navigate aren't just the kinds of diversity that are well trod by your DEI departments, but it's things like intergenerational diversity and especially neurodiversity. Oftentimes having people whose brains are fundamentally wired different, communicating on a team, you find that entrenched communications patterns break down really fast, and you've got to find new ways of communicating together. You may think somebody is having the worst day of their life because of just watching their face and picking up on their nonverbal cues, and not realizing if that person is a lot further along on the autism spectrum than you are, that may just be that person's resting condition. That person may be having the time of their lives, even when they look like they're kind of miserable, because the way that they express themselves is just fundamentally different. You may also find intergenerationally that people are wired pretty differently. We were talking a little bit about generational cohorts earlier, and so the differing experiences and expectations people bring to the workplace can vary wildly.
Yes, they do very wildly now. We talked a little bit about that. And it all boils back down to this sort of clean, in my opinion, what I've kind of come up with is this clean, clear, concise, and commanding communication. It's all these C's that I've come up with. This, a little alliteration here, but it's true. It's like you've got to kind of simplify the language so that it resonates with all of these four generations. Otherwise, you do get the emotional and the, all of these other things in play, depending on how people absorb the information. It's interesting.
Yeah. Jeff?
I was just going to say, I'm curious because the way that you talked about how you went about things, you identified things and you helped them fix things and all that, sounds like you're doing some of the work as well, and then coaching them along the way. Am I understanding that right?
I can sometimes be a player coach, but more often I'm just the pure coach with a team. And so, I mean, usually that comes down to facilitation and coaching in combination, and oftentimes mentoring someone who's in a leadership capacity with a team. I find that understanding at least the principles on a team, whether that's your project manager, your delivery manager, et cetera, as well as, I mean, in the case of product delivery, you've probably also got someone from product who's inherently involved in setting the priorities and the roadmap, and understanding those personalities, what deep story they're bringing, what generational cohorts are they from, et cetera, is a huge part of helping that partnership work together really great. And if that partnership is out of sync, then the whole team is going to be stuck in their little power struggle, as opposed to having a lockstep purpose where we all know why we're here, what we're supposed to do, and how it's supposed to feel when we're doing it right. So I start straightening those things out as soon as I can. And helping people feel seen is a huge part of it. I coached somebody one time who was at the very tail end of her career. She was planning on retiring within a year of my beginning on this engagement. The first thing I had to recognize was this person has deep, deep institutional knowledge. She'd been at this firm for something like 30 odd years.
Yes.
To respect the depth of knowledge she brought to the table, and also to respect her openness in having the conversation with someone, I think I was 30 years her junior at the time, was like the first step in building the level of trust that was necessary for me to be either a sounding board or, in some cases, an accountability partner for her. And then once you've got that, once you have people trusting each other and agreeing on the shared background of values and assumptions that's going to go into being a high-performing team, peer accountability becomes possible. And peer accountability is the superpower that almost all teams are missing. It's not the accountability of the boss saying, this is wrong and you need to fix it. It's the accountability of people who are each other's peers and supporters and standing side by side with each other saying, you said you would do this and you didn't. We all agreed that we were going to work this way. And lately I've seen that we are not working this way. And having the courage to speak up to their peers, even when a lot of people don't want to rock the boat, or other people are tired, or it seems like priorities are too pressing for us to work well together. Well, the courage of peer accountability is to say, our priorities are too pressing for us not to work well together. So let's hold each other accountable to the agreements we've made and the commitments we've made today.
And I think that's great because peer accountability is something that we talk about. I actually have a whole peer group leadership development group. And the whole idea behind that is to learn to hold each other accountable and to not feel threatened and to be able to feel comfortable to say things like you just described or things like that. And I think that's a key. We always talk about leadership development, but leadership doesn't mean you have to be leading somebody. It means that you're being a good leader within your peers as well. Right? You understand how to handle situations. You understand how to talk to other ones. You understand to let others talk. You understand to listen to them better. You understand the big word that you used that jumped out for me too was trust. So how do you build the trust into these groups, Chris?
I think trust has to first start with just knowing each other at all. So many teams, by virtue of either the way that their meetings are facilitated, the way that the workplace is set up, remote work can make this harder. Not having unstructured time together when you're all working remotely can be a big obstacle to building trust. And so it does take someone being intentional about setting time aside and saying, again, our work is too important for us not to know each other well. So we need to actually have unstructured time. I can tell this is working when a team starts laughing. And when a team doesn't all leave a virtual meeting when the agenda is done. Say you finish with 10 minutes remaining, and there's this imperceptible transition that happens from getting stuff done to just hanging out. And when you see a team make that breakthrough, they're laughing and they're hanging out at the beginning and end of every call as a remote team, and they want to start spending time together in person if the budget allows for it. You have broken through into a zone of much higher trust than most teams start with. If you think about you've probably talked on this podcast before about the Tuckman stages of team formation, forming, storming, norming, and performing. Getting a team from forming to performing really, really fast. One of your accelerants, the rocket fuel that gets a team through that curve at the fastest possible speed for them is almost always trust. And the faster you build it, the better. So knowing each other first, sharing common interests. I oftentimes ask people about their favorite movies, their favorite travel destinations, those anodyne things that aren't, say, politics or religion, that where people can come together and both and celebrate both their commonalities and their differences. Oh, you use olive oil on your bread? I like butter better. What the heck is wrong with you? people
Yeah.
can have those conversations and enjoy a little bit of gentle ribbing, and that is usually the kindling that gets the fire of humor and enjoyment together to happen. And that is when teams begin to trust each other and can hold each other accountable effectively.
Well, and also not being judged. When there is a difference of opinion, there's that respect aspect of it that says, okay, we can agree to disagree. That's a big, hairy word, or phrase. We can agree to disagree. That's important to set the precedent so that when you do have a difference of opinion, especially for somebody that's a little bit higher up in ranking than you do, it's okay. It's not going to break anything. It's not going to break down any relationships. So that trust factor is very important, and it has to be proven. It has to be tested and proven, I think.
People
So
always want to see that you're going to do what you say you're going to do. Again, I've got
Totally.
teams, and software teams are repeatedly told, we want you to fail fast, right? How often have you heard that mantra? And then what happens when a software team fails? Well, it proves that it's actually not safe to fail around here. Oftentimes, the response of leaders, when a deadline is missed or the level of quality isn't there when the deadline was hit, or just the effect of the program was not what was hoped for the cost of the investment, well, the team gets blamed. Well, that's not the behavior that you wanted when you said fail fast. What you wanted is to say, let's find out what works and learn as fast as we can so we can find what does work. And if you punish failure, even if it's just an imperceptible punishment, even if it's not a form of actual career loss, but it's just a vibe. It's a feeling that comes over people, and it's not the celebration of what was learned, but a chastising for falling short. That can be a thing that really erodes trust if it's contrary to the previous messaging. I find that, especially when a team forms, say you've got a leader that's mobilizing a brand new group of people to do something really important. The first 5 minutes of that leader talking to that team really sets the tone for everything that's going to happen.
yes.
I had a team that was really stuck in the mud for a while because the first thing the leader said to them in the first meeting they ever had together after they told each other their names was, we're going to go faster on this team than anybody else has gone. What they heard was, I'm going to burn you guys out. What he meant was, you guys are going to learn faster and be higher performing than any other team you've ever been on. But that's not what they heard, because he didn't understand who he was talking to and how he was talking, and he didn't choose his words very carefully. Really broke down trust between that team and that leader, and consequently between the members of that team too. So understanding how to build trust as a leader and saying the things that instill trust, and then demonstrating that you are going to keep your word to them about the kind of leader you say you are in the end.
Yeah, to me, that's huge. Go ahead, Jen. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, but here's the issue. I was going to say the same thing, Jeff. It's like, that's huge, but does a leader know how to initiate these conversations? That's the bottom line. So a lot of people, listen, Jeff and I talk to coaches all day long. Everybody, these leaders want to be good. They want to figure it out. But the problem is, again, they're bringing their experiences and whatever their first, sort of big job was, and all of their familial upbringing and how they communicated, first starting out in their careers. And sometimes through these decades, they don't change that, or they don't learn for whatever reason. And so it's really also learning how to be a leader, like learning how to initiate those conversations.
I think that's a big thing. I'm sorry, Chris, real quick, but learning is huge, right? So what happens is when we become a leader, we think, okay, we've reached it. I don't have to learn anymore. I'm just going to do what I do.
On the mountaintop.
Yeah, right. And the reality is, no, there's so much to learn. You should be learning every day on where things go. So sorry, Chris, what are you going to say?
Yeah, and I mean, going back to generational cohorts, every year a new group of people is entering the job market who have a set of skills that can be utterly unlike the skills and experiences of the people just a year ahead of them. I was born in 1982, which makes me what they call an elder millennial. And even though, say, like your younger Gen Xers who were born in, say, 80 or 79, it's just 2 or 3 years. But actually, culturally, I mean, I know a few of these folks, we are worlds apart in some ways in terms of the environment we grew up in and when we came of age. And to the same point, say, I drove to college with a Rand McNally atlas in my lap and enough change in my pocket to call from a payphone. And people just 2 years younger than me did not have that experience.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
And so as leaders, we have to stay curious about people's experience and not fall into the trap of thinking we know. Not enough leaders ask a couple of simple questions. Write these down if you're a leader with a whole new team, especially if you've got a bunch of people you manage that are a generation or two younger than you. What does everyone get wrong about what you do? What does everybody misunderstand about your job? What does everybody misunderstand about what it was like for you entering the labor market? What was it like at your first job? Those are some of the questions that can be incredibly insightful. As an elder millennial, a lot of my earliest professional experience, outside the music industry was spent in the middle of the Great Recession. And if you were a frontline employee during the Great Recession, you probably heard once a week, you are all lucky to have jobs at all. That was the level of value that your manager communicated to you every day. And a lot of us, that has really stuck with us, especially if we've been through a few layoffs. And so when you give someone from that generational cohort, say, some constructive feedback, you need to realize that they are 90% sure when they walk into the room that the axe is about to fall. And that's the level of defensiveness they're probably bringing. And that you got to spend a little bit of time disarming that defensiveness and letting them know everything is in fact okay before they're even going to hear anything you say. And that's just one example.
Well, another example is, what was their familial structure? Were they allowed to speak freely? Were they allowed to share ideas and, communicate freely within the family structure? Because the truth is, this is what I've studied, is most of us formulate our communication style between the ages of let's say 5 and 15. How we grew up, how we matured, how we went through puberty in our home structure. That's what we bring to the workforce a lot of times, especially if there are higher ups or if there's authority to deal with. A lot of times that transference of what were my parents like versus what is my boss like, you know what I mean? It's interesting how the generations, that has changed over the generations, but it's still there. Our DNA, that's just the way we're wired as a species, so it's all that stuff's so interesting. So that's why Jeff and I talk about being a leader is really like, you got a big task. You can't be boss man. You've got to kind of be part psychologist and part, have some part emotional intelligence about your position as well, because you're dealing with a lot of different personalities now. It's not like that, 50 years ago when everybody just came in and they kind of generically did their thing, whatever the boss wanted. It's so different now.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it really changes. It's funny when you were talking about the family life, I was thinking to myself, how many times, and I was going to ask you, Jenna, how many times in your life did you hear kids are to be seen and not heard?
Yes, kids are to be seen and not heard, especially as a woman. Honey, you don't talk to a male boss. You're a woman, so be careful how you position yourself.
But all that forms, who we are as people today, right? And so that's why we need to kind of change, because the world changed. I mean, I'll be honest. I mean, COVID changed it a lot. And COVID, we always talk about COVID because it was interesting. There's bad things obviously that happened, but there's so many upsides to me that happened from COVID, right? This ability to be able to do Zoom calls and it's not a big deal, but you just got to change the way you go about it, right? And so, it's more of a way to manage people, like when we used to do, I worked with a marketing PR firm, and there was like 40 people on the call. My whole goal in those calls, as the owner was talking, was I would go person to person and just watch for their tells to see how stressed out they were. And then I would call them afterwards and go, all right, talk to me, what's going on? And they're like, what do you mean? And I go, you got the fact that you're grabbing your hair and you're rubbing it back says to me, you are stressed, girl. Right. Yes. And they're like, I can't believe you saw that. And I'm like, no, that's what, but that's the kind of stuff we have to do as leaders and as managers, right? Just watch for those tells, excuse me, that really show the difference in there. So it is an interesting time.
Yeah.
One of the best questions I ask as a coach is, did you notice? And especially if I have come out of an observation like what you're describing. So many times the question that is the catalyst toward an aha moment for the leader is, did you notice? Did you notice after you said that 5 people on your team shut off their cameras? They were having such a hard time hiding their negative emotions at that moment that they felt like they had to hide their faces. Do you think maybe you said something that rubbed them the wrong way? Can we look at why that might be? What about their history with you might suggest that they either don't trust what you're saying at that moment, or that they feel in danger by what you just said, or that you are unearthing a lot of their buried frustrations? And by the way, where do those frustrations come from? And what have we done about them?
Yeah. Crazy, crazy. Hey, Chris, we got to wind things up here, but a quick question for you. What's one or two things that you can have our listeners kind of watch for as, I mean, you talk about having a superpower and being able to kind of get things in shape for people to really, high performance teams. What are two things that they should be looking for that would help them figure out, hey, I need to kind of bring someone like Chris in because I don't really have this high performance team that I'm looking for?
I'm going to narrow the scope of this advice to product teams. If you're building, whether it's software or some other kind of digital product, I'll just narrow it to that because it helps. It helps to put a little boundary around the context. A couple things I always watch for. One, know the speed of the team. How fast are they at finishing one feature or even one user story, as we call it in the agile world? If you don't know that, then you actually don't know how well your team is performing. So have some metric of flow. Second, watch for trust. I mean, I said it earlier, but whether the team is laughing, is challenging each other, and is holding each other accountable is one of the number one determiners of whether the team is high functioning, high performing, and is capable of self-correction. A team that is holding each other accountable will self-correct. They will self-manage, and they will solve their own problems before you as the leader can intervene, and they will probably solve it more effectively than you as the leader can. The teams you need to intervene on are the ones that don't have that capacity. And then third, what is the team's capacity for self-improvement and their hunger for self-improvement? What good self-improvement looks like is not just a team who reflects on their experience and does a post-mortem when it's already too late to do anything about it. It's a team that regularly reflects on their experience, comes up with a few simple ways to try something that might improve their process or their workflow or their way of communicating, and then looks back. This is the crucial part where 99% of teams don't do this. They don't look back at their previous efforts at improvement and ask if they worked or not. Mm-hmm. If the metric is we're going to get stuck less this week, we're going to have fewer tickets that get blocked, or we're going to have fewer things that are in progress for more than 30 days from now on. If you look back 2 weeks later, did that happen or not? Did we actually measure the outcome we were looking for from this experiment? And what are we going to do about the results? 99% of teams that try to do continuous improvement don't do that simple piece, and it can really blow up.
Cool.
That's very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. Love it. Love it. Hey, Chris, thanks so much for being on the show today. If people want to get a hold of you, how can they do that?
Go to noimpediments.com, read up on a little bit of what I've been talking about, maybe listen to some of my Instagram content at instagram.com/noimpediments, and book a free consultation with me. You can find my Calendly at noimpediments.com.
Cool. Love it, Chris. Thank you so much. Again, appreciate you being on the show. As always, folks, we're always excited when we have guests that come on. Chris's insights are amazing. So, go look up noimpediments.com and just kind of check them all out. And just continue for Jan and I, just continue to keep sending those emails. We always love to get them. We always love to get the encouragement to keep going. So thank you for your support as always. We appreciate it. Until the next time, folks, stay safe and be healthy.